إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير وأشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا وقائدنا ومعلمنا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. أما بعد. All praise is due to Allah. We seek His guidance, His mercy, His assistance, His forgiveness. We seek refuge in Allah from the evil within ourselves and from the evil of our actions. Whomsoever Allah guides, there is no one to lead astray, and whomsoever Allah leads astray, there is no one to guide him. I bear witness there is no one worthy of worship except Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is His servant and His messenger. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, upon his family, his companions, and all those who follow them until the last day. O you who believe, revere Allah as He should be revered, and do not die except in a state of salah. Beloved brothers and sisters in Islam. A few weeks ago, I began speaking on a topic as part of a series of khutbas, and I will be continuing this series today. Due to the sensitive nature of the topic, I opted not to speak about it the previous khutbah, simply because we had a number of our young children and youth that were here. But this is an important topic that we have to address this within our community, be able to understand it, and then take the steps to prevent it and stop it. This is the use or the issue of domestic violence. One of the understandings in terms of dealing with this issue, as challenging as it is, we've spoken before about the importance of preserving the dignity of the human being. That's where we begun when speaking about this issue. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given an honor and nobility to the human being. And when we understand the honor and the nobility that Allah has given to human beings, this should be a means for us to understand how grave the issue of abuse and domestic violence is. Another aspect that we spoke about is how to establish and maintain healthy relationships based on the Quran and the Sunnah of our beloved Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But today, what I want to focus on is understanding the various forms of domestic abuse that take place. If we do not understand how domestic violence and abuse manifests itself within our homes, how can we stop it? How can we stop it if we don't even know that it's happening, or realize that it is happening? And that's what the duration of today's khutbah is going to be based on, to understand the forms of domestic violence, and to be able to understand what it is within the Quran and the Sunnah that we're required to do in order to stop it. Because we have a responsibility in terms of if we find it within ourselves, we have to change. For the most part, when people think about domestic violence, they think only of the physical. They think that about the physical hitting that takes place in the homes. But when we understand that that's not the only form of abuse that exists, then we'll be able to know how to stop it. When it comes to physical abuse, this is the first one that I'll talk about. This is what is most commonly associated with domestic violence. It's the physical. Although it only occurs in 10% of the cases of domestic violence and within 10% of the households, in terms of the actual physical abuse, it's the other forms of domestic violence and abuse that account for the occurrence in over 50% of Muslim households. So only 10% are cases of physical abuse. This form of abuse manifests itself in many ways. So any form of shoving or hitting or punching or kicking or grabbing or slapping or twisting arms or throwing down, etc., all of these are forms of physical abuse. It can also be in the form of physically intimidating or threatening. So for example, if a person stands in a doorway preventing somebody from leaving, or standing over somebody physically with the intent of intimidating them or striking fear within their heart, all of these would fall under the category of physical abuse. Now, when we're talking about abuse, any time that we're talking about abuse, it's important to understand that abuse refers to a pattern of behavior that manifests itself for the sake of intimidating or controlling someone else. It is not an isolated incident. So if it happens one time within the household, it's wrong and it needs to be dealt with because the behavior itself is destructive and harmful. But it wouldn't be called abuse. Abuse is a pattern of behavior. So that is when something occurs over and over and over again for the sake of controlling somebody or instilling fear within them, then it falls under that category of domestic abuse. What does Islam have to say about this? Islam is very clear. None of the forms of physical abuse or the manifestations of physical abuse are acceptable. None of the forms of any abuse are acceptable within Islam, period. Within a marital relationship or within a family household, all of these forms of abuse, they're considered as moral. It's a form of oppression and they have to be stopped. When it comes to the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, well, how was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when it came to the use of the physical? This is narrated to us from Aisha radiallahu anha, the mother of the believers and the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What did she say? قالت رضي الله تعالى عنها ما ضرب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بيده خادما قط ولا امرأة له قط ولا ضرب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بيده شيئا قط إلا أن يجاهد في سبيل الله. This is a very clear indication of the way of the Messenger of Allah. Aisha, she narrated, the Messenger of Allah never hit a servant of his once. The Messenger of Allah never hit a woman, a member of his household, a woman, a wife, once. Never, not once. And the Messenger of Allah never hit anything with his hand at all. Except when he would go out for jihad fi sabilillah, for military activity. That was the only time in which the Prophet ﷺ would actually use physical. That's the only time in which he would use physical striking. Other than that, he never hit anyone or anything. Which means that he would not slam his hands on tables or hit walls or anything of that sort. ما ضرب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بيده شيئا قط. Not a single thing did he strike with his hands, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When it comes to physical abuse within the homes, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he prohibited unequivocally. He said, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ فِي النِّسَاءِ فَإِنَّكُمْ أَخَذْتُمُوهُنَّ بِأَمَانِ اللَّهِ. And in another narration, فَإِنَّهُنَّ عِنْدَكُمْ عَوَانٍ. Fear Allah. Be mindful of Allah. Have taqwa of Allah when it comes to your women. Because you have taken them as a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have taken them as a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in another narration he says that they are your committed helpers. فَإِنَّهُنَّ عِنْدَكُمْ عَوَانٍ. They're your committed helpers. In another narration, عن عبد الله بن زمعة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا يجلد أحدكم امرأته جلد العبد ثم يجامعها في آخر اليوم The Prophet ﷺ said, none of you should flog or strike his wife as someone would strike or flog a servant or a slave. And then he goes to her at night and has intimacy with her. This is somewhat of a contradiction. Now the Prophet ﷺ is not saying here in this hadith it's okay to flog servants. No. But he's saying don't do this to your wife and treat her like you would treat someone that would be as a khadim, which is not right either in terms of striking them, and then you go and you sleep with her at night. You have intimacy with her at night. In another narration, the Prophet ﷺ, and this is in Sahih Bukhari, both of these ahadith are in Sahih Bukhari. The Prophet ﷺ said, بِمَا يَضْرِبُ أَحَدُكُمْ إِمْرَأَتَهُ ضَرْبَ الْفَحْلِ ثُمَّ لَعَلَّهُ يُعَانِقُهَا. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, he is wondering, how does anyone strike or beat his wife as he would beat a male camel? And then he goes and he embraces her. It's an extraordinary contradiction. That for somebody to go and to treat their wife in that manner, to beat them, to flog them, like as if they're beating some horse or some camel, and then they go and they fulfill their right with them at the end of the night. This is something that made the Prophet ﷺ wonder. And this is something that leads to another form of abuse that can take place within households. And this is not something that we talk about often, but we have to address it. And this is sexual abuse. This is abuse when it comes to conjugal rights. We know that conjugal rights within a marriage, they're a part of establishing a sense of romance, of intimacy between a husband and wife that strengthens the bonds. It's something that is mutual in terms of the love that takes place. But if it is something that becomes forced upon another, like from one spouse to another, and usually it's from the husband towards the wife. If it's something that becomes forced upon her, or it's used as a tool for material gain, then this becomes a problem. This is where it can fall into the category of abuse. If there are intimacy issues between a husband and wife, they have to be dealt with. They can be worked out, but under no circumstance should any form of force be used in this regard when it comes to their spouse. Under no circumstance should any force be used whatsoever. I'm going to give a complete khutbah just on looking at one verse of the Quran and two hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. In fact, it will be two khutbahs. Just simply looking at the verse and the ahadith of how sometimes these verses or the ahadith are misused and misinterpreted by people, by Muslims, to say that these things are okay. It's not okay. And I'll make that very clear, inshallah, in a future khutbah. Another thing that can lead to sexual abuse within a marital relationship is the use of fuhsh. Things that a person looks at that are fahish. Things that a person looks at in order to fulfill their desires. Looking at the haram and then acting, having intimacy with their spouse while they're looking at the haram. Whether it's pictures, whether it's video, whatever it may be. The use of these things is completely and absolutely prohibited. Even amongst husband and wife, that they say it's okay between themselves, they say, yeah, it's okay, it helps us to enjoy ourselves more, so it's haram, is prohibited, unequivocally, because it can lead to much more abuse. It's a form of abuse and it can lead to even more abuse. What does Allah tell us in this regard? قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ ذَلِكَ أَزْكَى لَهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا يَصْنَعُونَ وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا. Allah says in the Quran to the Prophet ﷺ, commanding him, tell the believing men, lower their gaze and guard their chastity. That is pure for them. Surely Allah is all aware of what they do. And tell the believing women to lower their gaze and guard their chastity, and not to reveal their adornments except what normally appears. When couples, or one of the two, use these things that are fahish, that are abominations, these are illicit materials, when a person uses them for the sake of gaining some form of gratification and intimacy, this can lead down to a breakdown in marriage. We know that this is a problem within our community. It exists and it's a problem. It sometimes makes the woman feel that she's being betrayed. This is a form of betrayal, khiyana. Sometimes it gives a sense of inadequacy. Oh, you're not good enough. So you have to go to something else in order so that they can satisfy that particular need. And this leads to another form of abuse, which is emotional abuse. Emotional abuse. Some of the forms of emotional abuse, they include but aren't limited to belittling, insulting, calling one's wife unfit, or an unfit woman, or an unfit mother, or saying to one's husband, oh, he's not man enough. Making fun of the spouse, or calling them names, etc. All of these, if they happen on a continuous basis, then it's a form of abuse. Because it has an impact on a person's emotions. This is the majority form of abuse. When it comes, it's not the physical, it's the emotional and it's the verbal abuse, which I'll talk about next. But these are the primary forms of abuse that end up taking place within our households that have domestic violence. This is a form of violence. It's ta'neem. Don't think that it's otherwise. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us in terms of belittling, in terms of calling other people names? Allah is very clear in the Quran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la yaskhar qawmun min qawmin asa an yakunu khayran minhum wala nisa'un min nisa'in asa an yakunna khayran minhum wala talmizu أنفسكم ولا تنابذوا بالألقاب بئس الاسم الفسوق بعد الإيمان ومن لم يتب فأولئك هم الظالمون. And addressed to the believers. Oh believers, don't let some men make fun of others, ridicule others. It may be that they are better than them. And don't let some women ridicule other women. They may be better than them. Don't defame one another. Don't call one another by offensive names. How evil is it to act rebelliously after having faith? And whoever does not repent, it is they who are the true wrongdoers. So Allah is being very clear. Now this is between people. This is between one person to another. Between one man to another. One woman to another. How much more so then would this apply to members within our own household? They have more right not to be degraded, not to be belittled, not to be called names. I mean, how often is it that sometimes we hear parents that they'll call their children by names of animals. They'll call their own children animals. They'll call them stupid. They'll call them dumb. They'll call them this, they'll call them that. And all of that builds up. Don't think that it doesn't have an effect. It does. It has a severe effect. It has an impact. And this form of abuse, the emotional abuse, it comes from what someone says. It can come from what a person says. And this leads to another uncommon, unfortunately a very common form of domestic violence, and that's verbal abuse. So what is verbal abuse? This includes when a person yells, or screams, or swears, continuously arguing, talking over you, or using language that's threatening and intimidating. This is verbal. All of these things that emanate from the tongue. It includes threats to divorce your wife, or to marry someone else, for example, or to make false accusations. Oh, he's cheating on me. Right? Because this can go both ways. This happens on both sides. It's not only that we're picking on one spouse or the other. No. It can happen on both sides. We acknowledge and understand that when it comes to the physical, the vast majority of the victims are women and the vast majority of perpetrators are men. Right? That's just the statistic. That's the reality. But when it comes to verbal and emotional, you're going to see it on both sides. You're going to see it on both sides. And it's wrong on both sides. All of these forms are prohibited. When the Prophet ﷺ told us, this is a hadith that is narrated by Imam al-Bukhari in his Adab al-Mufrad. عن عبد الله عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ليس المؤمن بالطاعان ولا اللاعان ولا الفاحش ولا البذيء. That the believer does not insult or taunt the honor of others. They're not someone who attacks ta'an. Nor are they one who continually curses others. La'an. Nor do they abuse. Nor do they speak foul or indecent language. The badi. So this is not the characteristic of a believer. So any form of causing fear, you say something for the purpose of causing fear or intimidation in the heart of another member of the family. If you're doing that, you have to stop. Because this can actually, it's a form of verbal and emotional abuse if it's used for the sake of intimidating and controlling others. It's not permissible to put a sense of fear into the heart of a believer. There was one time the Prophet ﷺ was traveling with some Sahaba. And one of the Sahaba slept. And this Sahaba, he had just a rope with him. It was his. It belonged to him. And so one of the other Sahaba, just jokingly, he took this rope, right? And so when he took the rope, and the Sahaba woke up and he didn't find his rope, he was startled. He was frightened. What's going on? Perhaps he's frightened, right? And so then word of this got to the Prophet ﷺ. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? He said, لا يحل لمسلم أن يروع مسلما. لا يحل لمسلم أو لا يحل لمسلم أن يروع مسلما. It is not permissible for a Muslim to frighten another Muslim. This is what and look at the circumstances here. It was like just playing a joke or just let's take the rope and, right? But then the Sahaba, the effect of that, he was frightened. How much more so then does this apply when people are doing it on purpose for the sake of striking fear or intimidation into the heart of one's spouse or one's child? How much more so then does this prohibition apply? And so we have to be very careful. This is a general prohibition. Don't frighten other Muslims. It is impermissible. It is haram. La yahillu. It is not permissible for a Muslim to frighten another Muslim. This in general. How much more so then does this apply in our own household? Other forms of abuse, economic abuse or financial abuse. So if someone refuses to support their spouse or their children, for example, or if she wants to go work in something that is legitimate and there are no other impacts within the household, and then the husband simply just refuses, right? Or that he takes away wealth that belongs to the spouse, right? All of this is a form of economic abuse, right? Or sometimes they might use the wife that, okay, go apply for credit cards under her name and then use it, and then she ends up getting all this debt under her name, etc. for the sake of the husband, right? This is problematic. And so you have to be very careful, very vigilant. We're going to be asked about all these things before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we're doing any of these things, we will be asked. Don't think that we can get away with these types of behaviors. There are several other forms of abuse which we don't have time, to get into or to detail. But, they include neglect, they include isolation, right? Being controlling or over another, minimizing or denying one's wrong actions. Because this is the problem. Sometimes, people that think, no, I don't do that. But in fact, they do. Right? Or they think, oh, it's not a big deal. Right? It's not a big deal. So what? It is a big deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we have to, this is really the take-home message that we need to understand. Does this exist in my household? We have to reflect. Am I doing this in any way, shape, or form? If I am, I have to be critical of myself. I have to take myself to account. This is something that we have to be consistent in. If any of these forms exist, we have to be consistent in taking ourselves to account. There's spiritual abuse, which I'll detail in another khutbah, and psychological abuse. Both of these are very dangerous forms. They're very dangerous, and they happen. And if they are happening in our own household, we have to put a stop to it. Only when we become aware of all these different forms of abuse, then can we say, I need to put a stop to it, I know how to put a stop to it. And we'll detail these in another khutbah, but in the meantime, take yourself to it. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك يا ربنا سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين وارحم موتانا وموتى المسلمين. اللهم انصر اخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان. ارفع البلاء عن امه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم في بلاد كشمير وفي الشام وفي فلسطين وفي جميع البلدان يا ارحم الراحمين. ارفع البأس والبلاء عن المسلمين برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين. والطف بنا وبجميع المسلمين بلطفك فيما جرت به المقادير. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله.